Thank you all for taking the time, and very much welcome here to this webinar regarding information management with one of our very good partners, Happit IT and Daniel Haslund, which I will have the pleasure here of introducing to you. Again, we are very excited for you to be here. I'm just thinking maybe just give people a couple of maybe 1 minute more to enter. I see people are still coming in. Practical new information could be that you, if you would like to ask a question during this, which we will follow up in the Q&A, please do so in the chat, and we will make sure to answer these either along the way in the interview, in the webinar, or after in the Q&A session. But again, thank you very much for being here. And what this webinar is about and the value of it is that, of course, as you are a client or customer looking to embark on a digital transformation, the outcome is of course top of mind. But to be able to create a great outcome, you need great planning, and so that's why we thought it would be very relevant for us, for you, to actually hear from one of our partners in order to see how planning and information management and vision scope approach to your Microsoft journey and digital transformation journey gets the best outcome, so to speak, with the best planning. So without further ado, I will introduce Daniel Haslund. He's the CEO of Happit IT, one of our Swedish partners. So take it away, Daniel.
All right, thanks, Hans. Yeah, I'm happy to be here and share a little bit around my thinking and knowledge in this area. I will start up the presentation and take it from there. All right, I hope presentation is visible.
Right now, Daniel, we see your screen with the, oh, that's my, no, it's not my screen. We don't see your screen right now.
Okay.
I just see your, I see your screen, but not your presentation.
Okay, let's do it like this then.
Here we go.
Better now. Yep. All right. Yes, so a little bit shortly about myself first before we get into the topic. My name is Daniel then. I'm living in Sweden, Stockholm. I have a rather long background in the IT business, around 15 years plus or something like that. I started my journey working mainly around in the integration area with a specialization on SAP and BizTalk. And back in those days, I really got to know how the process is functioning and connecting that with the IT technology. And that has always been an interest of me, that not just talk about the pure technology, but also understanding the connection with the business processes. Lately, I've been working mainly in various manager positions and a lot of focus on the enterprise architecture and looking into the bigger picture, making the plans and identifying the way forward. Since some time back, I took the step and started off my own company, Happit AB, and it's on behalf of that I'm here today. Then, and within this company, then we're focusing on IT strategy and information management, and as informed as well, and WorkPoint partner. Few words on how I self-landed in this topic around the document management, and where as well I'm sharing my knowledge on the area. But then one of my previous employees where I was employed, we started up actually a bigger document management project that I was and responsible over. This is a company that had 15,000 employees. It was already well in the Microsoft ecosystem, but it had a lot of other, or have a lot of other applications and so on as well. And one of the key project or business area is projects then that they're delivering projects towards the customer and so on. But the starting point around it was more or less on this topic, what I choose to call the COVID hangover. meaning that I think a lot of companies have faced this as well, that the Teams came, COVID came, everyone had to sit and work remotely more or less overnight. It was pushed out. It was an excellent tool. It's filling the purpose. But at the same time of this, then it started to get the shredded where you're storing your documents. It's popping up new sites all over the place. The documents are stored on the left and right, and you still have your old technologies, etc., where documents are supposed to be stored. But at the same time, the user want to be somewhere else, or needed to be somewhere else actually in order to perform the daily work. And with that, then it came very, very quickly then that we lost the control around the different documents and so on. And then it came this type of typical problem statement, just a simple question: where do I store my documents? How do I share them? And archiving, and as well around the security and the GDPR compliance and so on as well. So this was the starting point of this, and how I then started. And I will share a little bit then on the way forward, how to tackle these kind of things from a planning phase a little bit and on the strategy. So here is maybe the core essence as I see it in the early phase before you actually starting a new implementation around the document management solution or building up. And then of course the maturity is very different around different companies where they are around this. But firstly, the strategy and the ways of the working, that it needs to be really clear that you're understanding the business strategy and as well the different working processes. Security and the compliance as well. It's essence that you understand you must do. So what is our compliance definitions and targets? How is the governance looking around all this? And then of course the technology and the architecture. What is our current IT technology landscape? How does this fit to the information management architecture? What is our primary ecosystems that we are working in? And of course, the adoption needs to start from day one, where you need to actually listen in to the demands, making sure you're communicating already then, supporting, being there with the true end users and so on. In the following part now on this presentation, I will then focus a little bit deeper in these different areas and explain a bit more about that. So on the strategy, as mentioned here, just to get started, and I mean, it's not like you need to know the full extent of the business strategy down to every single detail, but in order to deliver or set up a solution, of course, you need to get to know the business. You need to know their core model. You need to know the geographic. I mean, it can be a big difference depending on which country, which parts of the world the different countries are, and as well what are then connected down to the legal requirements and so on that we're having there. And also then understanding where is the company heading, what is the targets and the development around that on the business level. Then almost the most important, or even more important, is of course the true end user. How does a typical day look like for an end user when they're going from the office? They're visiting maybe the first customer, the other customer, and so on as well. What's the requirements while they're doing this? Are they working online, offline? Are they primarily working from their computer, or is it mobile tablets, or is it a combination around that? And also here, of course, extremely important, what's working well and what's working a bit less well, so to say. Then the third piece, as I see it, is key here as well, is of course the customer in the end as well. I mean, they are the one putting the demands towards the business and the user. So of course, very much depending on which type of business module the company is having. But here is as well then extremely important to understand the type of the customer. What is the volumes we're talking about? Are we talking fewer but huge, large customers where you have long project assignments, or is it the completely other type of business model where you're actually having a lot of thousands and they are not really involved in this document management solutions and so on? And also here then, how is a typical assignment looking towards the customer? But another thing as well, we're running across quite a lot, and I would say this is very common, at least in Sweden as well, around the public sector and so on. Do they have special requirements? It can very well be so that they are actually requiring that we need to go in to their solution in order to exchange or work with their document management solution, storing things there on their terms and premises and so on as well. And then of course it doesn't help if we're just implementing an own solution and then that's not functioning with the end customer. Another piece that I mentioned around this is the security and the compliance. And here is where you're creating so-called rule book to follow in the future. And here it's important as well that to involve the correct stakeholders, if there is a legal department or who is in the end responsible, because this is actually the core essence where you need to define the must-dos and the requirements. And I mean, it's here as well, it can be severe consequences if we're having policies and we're not living up to those. We're talking about this GDPR fines, etc., and so on as well, that is well connected into this. So general, this policy document needs to be created very early, and then that as well will set the direction and how to build the solutions and so on as well. But security to be taken in consideration here. The legal requirement, what kind of legal requirement do you have as a, for example, stock listed company? Which countries are you operating in once again? Classification is another core essence in the whole document management solution, that you need to already from the early beginning, okay, do you have already a data classification set, or does that need to be created? And I've been working mostly with these 4 different classifications that you're having this type of secret documents that are very, very limited who can access and work with those. Then you're having the confidential layer where it's a little bit more people maybe having access, but it's still rather restricted, and it should be more or less on the name user basis. Then you're having the internal where it's important that the material are staying within the company, but you're most likely sharing and working with those documents in a larger content. And here is as well important to connect that as well, not just to the document, but also to the data. And then you're having the public layer in this example, then where you are then working with the documents and data that are not just internal but externally, and might even be published on some kind of marketing, etc., and so on as well. So this classification is a core foundation as well, and how you as well then can label and work with the documents in the future. And it's as well here I like to connect the classification with the labeling with the retention policy, meaning how long should we store these documents, how long should those remain, and so on as well. Many times that requires then that you go, okay, secret, and then maybe you have a subset of different type of document types on the secret, but avoiding taking too wide range of this subsite in order to connect it to your retention policy and those requirements. And as well then making sure that you're not storing the documents longer than you actually should. All right. Governance roles and responsibilities is as well another core essence in the beginning. And I mean, here is, I think it's very common as well. Okay, we want to do this. We want to implement the document management. We're not going to want to get it better controlled and so on as well in the future. But it will require effort. Of course, an implementation project will always require resources and a team working around that. I don't think anyone is questioning that. So this is more about the long term, that start already from the beginning, identifying the team that needs to work and ensuring that we're living up to this document policies that we talked about, but also working with the support through the organization. With the adoption and making sure that we identify these different type of positions. This is an example then how it can look like, that in the end it need to be someone that are owning the area. For example, as a document management lead, I mean, it's of course very much depends on the requirements, but if it's a full-time position or not. You need someone overwatching the full solution architecture. You probably need some type of connect with the legal and the compliance knowledge and so on as well. But then as well, it's important that it's an organization that's getting very close to the daily life. And here I choose to call these people as document coordinator, but it can be a typical key user that many are already having in their organizations today, then knowing a little bit more about the solution, how to work with the different documents. But then as well, in this case here, it's built on a solution where you're in a company that have operate in multiple countries, but also having various different business areas and so on as well. So there are, and this is of course the complexity many times when you're building this kind of solution, especially from the legal and the policy terms, that, I mean, here you might have certain goals and targets and you're looking a little bit more on the bigger picture on the global strategy for the company, while you're actually having local requirements down on the country area and so on as well. So it's of essence here as well that you're having the correct identified stakeholders in each and single of this area, and they are as well signing off and knowing, okay, as head of a country, for example, then I know what my obligations are around this. I need to nominate document coordinator, etc. This is the things that we need to do. But also it needs to be clear there under what's the role of a typical site owner, meaning someone that have created a site that it contains content, they have a responsibility, a key user, and down to every single employee. So I would say that this is as well then a very important factor in order to make this whole solution to function and operate. Going over a little bit then from this security and the compliance, I can talk a little bit more around the technology architecture and the bigger picture around that. And here is as well, I see it very important that when making this type of solutions around document management and so on, in the end, it's business data you're talking about, it's content. And many times you want to combine the data, metadata, for example, you're having with the documents with other type of data that's coming from your ERP, if that's SAP or Dynamics or whatever that could be, and so on as well. And then you're having this other type of middle layer of the type of data and files and the pictures and so on as well. So it's really important here as well that making sure that the solution is thinking through all of these layers, because I can guarantee that will be expected at some point that you're creating this kind of combined report or combined view where you can see some of the business data with the documents, how to populate the documents with the correct data that's coming from your ERP solution, for example. So avoid just looking into and working here in the inner layer, but try to see the big picture and think how should that fit together as well once you're up and running. Few words as well then around the Microsoft and 365 strategy. This was another as well wake-up call for me when I was in my position and looked into it, but what actually do we already paying for part of our licenses? What do we actually already having? And I mean, looking in then from a document management perspective and the full actually IT landscape perspective, and part in the Microsoft licenses, you're getting a lot of functionalities actually that you need, and many companies out there today then having a lot of duplicate solutions for this that is already then part in their licenses. In this solution here, I choose to combine the Microsoft E363 license with the E5 security. One of the drivers for the E5 security is Azure Information Protection, where you can actually classify and label your documents and making sure those are protected in a technical level on SIM according to your classification. But it also having the overall data loss prevention and so on as well. But otherwise, usually looking into solutions that are circulating a lot in this area, looking in, okay, do we need E5, this full security, or is it enough at this level? How could we actually maximize the usage of our SharePoint, OneDrive, Office package? Are we working already in Dynamics? Do we have our environment then fully in the cloud, in the Azure cloud? How do we protect our true workstations with, for example, Microsoft Intune? How do we encrypt the data on the hardwares, etc. This is another way then how to look at it from this perspective as well. That, I mean, this doesn't tell the end user so much. Okay, it looks good, but what does it mean for me? And that's, of course, as I said before, with the strategy, look into the end user requirements and try to put yourself in their shoes as well, and looking in how would it actually function and looks like for them, and what type of tools will they have in the future. So this is an example here then where you can use the OneDrive for the common files and document management, etc. You have solutions where you're working online, offline. You're having your Office package, which is primarily then used with your Word, your PowerPoints, etc. It's also here where you can do the labeling, as I mentioned a couple of times. You have the Teams for the collaboration, and also Exchange and emailing is a core essence. You're, for example, maybe running then in the Azure cloud environment with a so-called zero trust, mean that you are supposed to be able to work from anywhere and not maybe sitting locked into your own network. The computers are controlled then via the Intune, for example, then, and making sure you're having the full control on everything that's happening here and making sure those are protected. So this is the kind of starting point for many, and I think this is a very common setup that most are there. But it's also here where, for me, the WorkPoint came into the picture. Okay, we want to use this, we want to use that, and so on as well. But how can actually centralize a lot of the things happening, and especially around the document management for my case. And there WorkPoint comes in as a solution then that you can install on top of all of these other services, and completing them where you can, for example, have your central dashboard, one place to store and archive the accesses with the full, for example, integrations to the Exchange emailing, and also then running your projects and so on top of it. So to summarize up these kind of pointers here a little bit as well, then, and then few words what that's leading to, and after that we will look into the glimpse how it could look like, for example. But on the strategy and the ways of working, then when you're understanding your customer, what they want, how they are working, and so on as well, you're able as well then to put that down to the plan and have a clear view what are actually the demands and the requirements around your document management solution. Creating this document management policy document with the classification. Here you're having then the rule book. Okay, here you're having the demands. Here you're having then the rule book and saying, okay, this is how you can play. Understanding the information management landscape on the technology architecture as mentioned. Here as well, then you're able to look in and understanding your full content, how the data connect between the different areas and so on as well. You're getting a clear view here as well, then what is our kind of a strategy when it comes to Microsoft 360? What type of licenses do we have? What is part on that? What could we actually utilize as of today? Are we having duplicate solutions that we should consider to removing, and maybe are we able to live up to those around that, or do we need to complete it with something else? The organization then as well, identifying the rules that around the organization, how will this be set up and functioning, who will do what is the responsibility of every single person within the company. And based on that, then putting together a completed Microsoft 365, in this case, then strategy, and saying, okay, this is actually how we should work with the documents, this is how it should fit together, and so on as well. And here you're having then a clear understanding on these points when going through these preparation steps. Then, of course, this is start of the journey, but I would say that doing this piece thoroughly and understanding how we want it and so on as well, I can guarantee that the design and the planning implementation will go fast. for example, WorkPoint, I mean, you can install a WorkPoint solution more or less over a day and you can be up and running. But if you don't know if that's going to fit to your demands and so on as well, you will have a long journey there to understand. So making sure having the initial plan and understanding, then can definitely go and do that installation quickly and continue working towards your master plan and while configuring and working further on it and so on as well. So this is mainly what I talked about here, then this early investigation plan that you then need to put into the design, planning, implementation, but also here in the end, so important with the support and the follow-up, making sure there is a team support in following up, seeing it through, because a document management solution and project will or must actually involve every single user or customers, even in some cases, in order to be successful. Looking in how this could look like, for example, then, I mean, from a vision state, for example, where you're having a central access up here on the top layer, for example, where you're logging in the morning, you're able to see your different projects, your different customers, the task you're having around that. You're able as well then to pull out your type of reporting combined from your data. For example, here using the Power BI and the Power Platform environment. And here as well, I like to see, I mean, most of the companies as of today are having so many different sources from the ERP and other applications and so on. So here, definitely the data middle layer here is a very strong key as well in order to succeed. And as I talked about before as well, cannot just always see it just from a document management perspective. Okay, we store the documents, but actually many times you need actually to get your hands on the data that you're having in the ERP in order to, for example, write down the documents with the correct metadata and the reference and so on as well. So having as well a clear information management and data strategy helps a lot, I would say, around this middle layer, and as well a clear vision here, which tools do we use for the reporting and so on. And it's so here also then where WorkPoint plays itself, that it's kind of combining the different levels and the information and the process flows. And then on this example, then a solution on how it could look like, for example, the structure set up in the SharePoint with, for example, a WorkPoint solution, where you're having a customer-centric approach, meaning that the customer is in the center when you're logging in. For example, having the journalizing on all your Exchange mails and under the customer, but each and single customer then could have different project sites. For example, here we're running projects, but it might be in different type of sites for the sales and so on, and combining this then with the central library solution. So it's possible to come to this level, but it's good then to do this initial design work and investigation and looking into it. I think that was what I was about to present and tell about today. I would, of course, gladly answer questions after this session here as well, or if you prefer as well, you can get in contact with me later on as well. So I'm sharing my contact details here, and I think we will be able to send out those later, and glad to get in contact with all of you. So that stands, I'm ready to go over to the question and answers.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you everybody for attending. I see we have a question in terms of how, maybe you touched upon this a little bit with your contact details, of course, but how can we get into a further dialogue around this? I would say we would be happy if you reach out either to us via the mail that's sent out along with the recording, or you can you are more than happy to take contact with Daniel directly if needed. Otherwise, we will be happy to introduce and make that introduction, and of course be part and support that dialogue. So please, if you have, I know we have a bit of delay in terms of answering questions and putting in questions in the chat because this is a live event. But please do, if you have any questions to this, please put them in the live Q&A, bottom of your screen in the right corner. Thank you. And maybe Daniel, I don't know if you could maybe elaborate a little bit on if the attendees would like to reach out and what's the next step.
Yeah, typical next step would be that we're having a dialogue and, for example, could take an initial workshop 1 to 2 hours online, or if it's nearby, also visiting and having just an initial dialogue around your as-is states, your requirements, and looking into from that in a type of workshop approach, how a next possible step could be.
Perfect. Thank you. I hope that answered the question. Any other questions? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Daniel, for a very good presentation. Of course, give a little bit of an insight to how you work and how you work with WorkPoint, and how we, of course, approach the market from the importance of making good planning before you embark on your transformation. What we will do after this is send you a mail with the recording. There might be a special offer in there. I'm still working that out. Perfect, thank you. We have a question around that you would like to have a demo and information session about WorkPoint as a case management system, including pricing, etc. I think we will be more than happy to put that in the planning and make sure that we do a webinar on that. And of course, for your individual leads, please reach out and we will set up that call. Perfect. Otherwise, please again also feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel or LinkedIn post, both for ourselves and for Daniel after this. So we will keep doing what we can to present you with the relevant information. But thank you so much for your attendees here today. Thank you for your time, and we will be back shortly with the next webinar series. Thank you.
Good.